And welcome to another Cardinals Nest here on HBC Channel 25. Thanks for watching. Dean Beckman along with Sports Information Director Donny Nadeau. And we have pooled our resources. And later on in the show, in the interview segment, we're going to have Eric Lindquist, the swimming and diving head coach for the Cardinals, as their season sort of coming to a climax very soon with the conference championships, Donny.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that we're going to be talking all day today about the end of seasons. It seems like the winter season's just begun, and here we are talking about the ends. And I know that as we talk about swimming and diving, the whole season really builds up to the three-day conference championships, which happen in a week. So I know Coach Lindquist is excited. They had a very good performance last weekend up in the Twin Cities, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little bit about his expectations for the conference championships and how the swimming and diving programs are progressing.
Yeah, all right, so we'll talk to Eric in just a little bit here, but first we'll take a look back on the past week of St. Mary's athletics and tell you about some of the things that happened. And we'll begin with women's hockey because that's one of the teams on campus still fighting for an MIAC playoff berth. And Donny, a somewhat disappointing weekend against Augsburg. And I say that even though the Cardinals won Saturday's game by a 5-1 mark, I say disappointing because that Friday game I think is one that Coach Manor would definitely like to have back along with the players.
I think you talk about somewhat disappointing. I think if you ask Coach Manor, it would be very disappointing. And for just that reason, the Friday game they did not play very well at all, and it's one of those that this was a team that they were ahead of in the conference standings, probably should have beaten rather easily 2 times, and instead they end up with a split. Losing that first game 4-1 is what really, I think, really bothered Coach Manor in that, you lose a 2-1 game, well, there could have been a break here or there that happened and allowed Augsburg to score 2 goals, but for them to score 4 and St. Mary's only score 1, that was obviously very disappointing and very evident if you look at Saturday's game where that St. Mary's won 5-1. I think was more what Coach Manor expected from both games. The nice thing about that Saturday game is it does keep St. Mary's right in that 4 spot with 5 teams making it to the conference tournament. And so I think they're sitting very good right now. They've got a big weekend this weekend at St. Benedict. Again, a team that they should come away with 4 points. And I know that, Coach Manor is going to remember last year when they had St. Benedict here the last weekend of the regular season, needed 2 wins to get into the conference tournament and won the first and then lost the second. And so I think that they have a little revenge on their minds, but also knowing that it's 4 very important points.
Right, and the game against St. Ben's, both of them at St. Cloud, so they've got to go on the road, so 2 important games, and they won't be at St. Mary's for either of them.
Right, and it's one of those things every other year they have to travel to St. Ben's, and then during that same schedule year they'll have Concordia come here, so there's always one trip every year that they've got to take where it's 2 games at one place. And I know that traditionally they've been very successful up in St. Cloud, and they have a very good overall record against the Blazers, so hopefully that can continue. And if that's going to continue, they need to continue to get some solid offensive performance from some of the people they are right now. Stevie Feek is having an outstanding year. She had 2 goals Saturday in that win against Augsburg. She's got 6 goals on the season now. A great sophomore year for her. Nicole Olson's got a team leading 10 goals, which is phenomenal for her. And obviously it's nice for those 2 to continue to to put the puck in the net. And Ingrid Clockers had a good game on Saturday with 2 goals as well. So obviously, as we talk every week, it's important to spread that scoring out and get some scoring from some people who maybe haven't been contributing. And right now, when they're successful, that's exactly what they're doing.
So including the St. Ben's games coming up, they will have still 3 weekends of conference play, right? So 6 games left in the conference as we tape this. So really coming down the stretch, although they do go a week longer than the men do.
Right. They've got St. Ben's this weekend, then it's Gustavus next weekend, and then they close out with St. Olaf a week after the guys have actually finished their season. They'll finish next weekend. So there's a lot of hockey left to play. You've got 6 conference games. That's 12 points. And when the race is as tight as it is, St. Mary's could really logistically finish anywhere from 2nd to 5th. So it's one of those things where every game is going to be important. And I think that if Coach Manor wants to stress anything to his players right now, it's playing well on Friday. The last 3 Fridays that they've played, they've lost. So the first game of each of their last 3 series they've lost, and in each of those games they've scored 1 goal. So I think getting the series off on a positive note, obviously scoring more than 1 goal and getting a win would certainly be a big boost for them. And not to say that that would make Saturday any easier, but obviously right now Fridays have been a real struggle for them, and they need to do a better job of that first game of a series getting a win.
Might have to change up the routine a little bit. On the men's side, also a couple of losses against Augsburg last weekend. And Donny, I saw the Friday night game. It was a 4-2 win for the Augies there. Really, I thought very two evenly matched teams. The bounce is just not going the way of Coach Moore and the Cardinals.
Yeah, it's funny. You look at a team that's got 1 win on the season, and you know, it seems weird to say that they're very close to being a 500 team. And yet, if you look at the game on Friday, they went into the third period trailing 4-2. They lost 5-4. That was the 9th time this season that they've had a lead or been tied in the third period, and that they have not come away with a win. So, I mean, they're that close. A bounce here or a bounce there, a big goal when they needed it, and all of a sudden, you know, those 9 losses could very easily be 9 wins. Now, all of a sudden, you're looking at a team that's 10-9 instead of, you know, 1-19. So they are very close, and obviously, no coach likes to hear about moral victories, but, you know, it's so close for that team. They just can't seem to get over the hump. Saturday's game, a 4-2 loss at Augsburg, really was a 3-2 game. Augsburg scored an empty net goal with 30 seconds to go. So again, another one of those 1-goal games that you know, they're so close. They just can't seem to get that one goal when they really need it. And like the women, you know, we talk about the men. They've lost their last 3 Friday games as well, and in each one of those, it's been a 1-goal game. So a lot of close games. Unfortunately, each one of them is coming out on the wrong end.
I want to get your opinion on a couple of the younger freshman players for the Cardinals. Kevin Wentland has seen tons of playing time this year. Definitely does not look like a freshman out there on the ice.
Yeah, he's a very solid player. He's got 9 points right now, 4 goals and 5 assists. Does a great job, and obviously is a good building block for the future. And you know, they've got a lot of talented sophomores as well. Vincent Unclesbay's really come on. He struggled a little bit early on because of an injury, and has come on and had a goal in each of the last 2 games, and is really becoming a force. And you know, it's those kind of people, and the play of their 2 goaltenders, Andy Scheib and Jason Horseman. You know, you get solid goaltending, and they're both freshmen, so you've got 3 more years with those 2 between the pipes, and obviously it's a very solid nucleus for Coach Moore to build the program around. And I think that you know, the fact that really, if you look at this season and you look at these 2 games against Augsburg, they haven't packed it in. You know, they've won 1 game, they're 19-1, and yet every game that they play, they're out there, they're battling from start to finish, they're giving it everything they've got. Nobody's thrown in the towel. I think that says a lot for the team that they have, and you know, what Coach Moore has instilled in them in terms of you know, just the desire to play, and the pride in wearing the St. Mary's jersey. And I think that obviously you know, everybody would like to be, you know, 19-1-1 right now, but I think right now what he's doing is he's taking those baby steps. They're in these games rather than last year when they were getting blown out every game, and I think that that's certainly a positive step in the right direction.
Coming up, the last couple of weeks of the schedule, St. John's and Gustavus are left, and Friday night is the St. John's game at the SMU Ice Arena. It'll be senior night for the Cardinals.
Yeah, and anytime you have senior night, it's always a special time, and you know, the Cardinals are graduating 8 seniors, which is it's a big number. And if you look at Coach Moore's recruiting, he's going to have to replace eight figureheads that have been in that program for 4 years. So it'll be a special night for those 8, and hopefully, you know, as we talked about in the fall, hopefully those 8 will step up and play one of their better games, and hopefully when we're talking again the next time we're taping, that you know, we're talking about some wins for them, because I think that they're very close to easily finishing out the season with 3 or 4 wins in their last 4 games.
Right, and so we'll switch now over to men's basketball, Donnie, and we weren't on last week, so we haven't had a chance to talk about the big win for the men's basketball team over Gustavus. It was an exciting game, and the guys came through over one of the top teams in the conference.
Yeah, it was a very big win for them. Gustavus is second in the conference, and for St. Mary's to pick up a win against them is just huge. I mean, it's the first time in 17 years that a St. Mary's men's basketball team has beaten Gustavus. So obviously a very big positive for them. And hopefully, as they're starting to wind down their season, will be one of those things that they can carry on to you know, to the end of this year and into next year as well, as you start talking about building your program. And we talked about freshmen on the men's hockey team that have really stepped up and been people that you can build around. Obviously, Coach Landrum's got 3 people that he can continue to build upon with Will and Lucas. Now next year will be seniors, but we've also got freshman Chris Palmer this year, who's just had a phenomenal year. In just their last game against Carleton last Wednesday, had his 5th double-double of the year with 14 points and 11 rebounds. Outstanding performance for a freshman, and really is becoming somebody who's making a name for himself in the league. Obviously, first time around throughout the league, not too many people had heard about him, and were probably a little surprised at his performance. Second time around, I think teams are knowing what to expect, and yet he's still putting up very impressive numbers.
In your years of covering the men's basketball team, have you seen a player like Chris have such a dominant freshman season consistently? It's not just one game, it's throughout the season.
Right.
He's been posting these double-doubles.
Yeah, as Coach Landrum likes to call him, he's a man-child. I mean, he is a player that absolutely is taking over games. And more importantly, it's taking some of that pressure off of Will and Lucas. Now all of a sudden teams can't focus on them. And I mean, Chris is doing it, not only is he scoring the points, but he's also doing it on the boards, and that's a very important aspect of the game that really coaches for the Cardinals in the past haven't had that luxury of a player who really can just be a dominant person underneath it. Right now, that's what Chris is being.
Was Chris one of those big recruiting catches, or has he just developed into a bit of a surprise?
No, I think it's probably a little bit of both. I know that Coach Landrum and assistant coach Kevin Landrum spent a lot of time recruiting Chris and really wanted to get him here. And I think that he's blossoming into probably something more than they probably expected this early. I think they probably saw what his potential was, but he's bringing out that potential, from the get-go. And I think that that's something usually a freshman needs to take that first year to adjust and get used to playing at the collegiate level. But Chris needed about 2 games, and he was adjusted and has just taken off running.
Right. All right. The women's basketball team, a win over Carleton College before a loss to St. Kate's, and so the women's team now 5-16 as their season comes to a close. Just one home game left this upcoming Saturday.
Yeah, it was a big win against Carleton. They really needed that, and on the flip side, I think it was a little bit of a disappointing loss to St. Catherine. I know Coach Pearson was feeling very good about how her team played on Saturday against St. Kate's. The problem was that they let St. Catherine get a couple possessions where St. Mary's couldn't match them point for point, and all of a sudden a 1-point ball game became a 10-point ball game, and that's the one thing that Coach Pearson has always been trying to stay away from, is letting that other team, their opponent, get on that kind of a run. Usually what's been happening recently is that those type of runs have been in the first half, and we've been digging out of holes, matching teams very well in the second half, but having to dig out of such a big hole in the first half, we haven't been able to catch up. Well, against St. Kate's, played very well in the first half, actually led by 3 at the break, and really were in command for most of the second half, and then all of a sudden things just kind of turned cold for them over the last 10 minutes. St. Kate's went on a little bit of a run, and all of a sudden it was a 10-point St. Catherine win.
And coming up this Saturday, it'll be Concordia College, the women at 1 o'clock, the men at 3 o'clock, and you can see that doubleheader right here on HBC. Paul Van Beek and I will have the call on that beginning at 1 o'clock with the women's game, 3 o'clock the men's contest. Donny, just a few seconds left here in this segment, but track and field, they had another meet this past week.
Yeah, they were at the border battle in Superior, and Coach McMahon was thrilled with the performances. We won't be able to talk about Andrew Brugan this week because Andrew got the week off. So with him gone, obviously there were some other people that stepped into the spotlight. Kurt Van Asten broke the school record in the 200 hurdles. That was a record that was been in existence for 14 years, which was great for Kurt to break in his senior season. And then the 4x800 women's relay team also broke the school record and also a 14-year-old mark, so it was great to see that. Interesting side note, Terry Heinzen finished second in the 200 after actually finishing first in the 200, but there was a timing snafu and they had problems with the results, so they had to rerun the race, and she actually finished second the second time around. So obviously a good performance for her, a second in the 200 and in the long jump. So a good performance all around. And as we'll talk, same as we'll talk with Coach Lindquist, it's a continual progression as they build up for the MIAC indoors.
Okay, good segue into Coach Lindquist. He's next here on the Cardinals Nest on HBC.
Terry, I'm getting a lot of people asking me what kind of phones we have. Why don't you go over them with me and I'll write a script up.
Okay, sure. We have everything from the simplest phone to the BlackBerry. We have a lot of people asking about the new touchscreen phones, and my personal favorite is the NV3. We're always getting in new phones.
Oh, excuse me, I better take this.
Would you like to schedule a time to change your phone around?
Something wrong?
No reason, no reason.
Hey, how's it going?
And we're back here on the Cardinals Nest. Dean Beckman, Donny Nadeau, Eric Lindquist joining us now, the
That's
swimming
Eric.
and
I'm Donny.
diving coach. Oh, did I point at the wrong
Just in
person?
case you couldn't tell the difference here.
Oh, I see. Well, you know, I obviously missed the memo, the wardrobe memo at St. Mary's this week. I'm the only one not in the red polo shirt. So anyway, maybe next time. And it's even the same polo shirt. They've both got swimming and diving written on it. But Eric, you've been on the show before.
Yep.
So thanks for being on again. And tell us how the season's been going so far up to this point. And I know you always look to progress, not necessarily win the dual meets or anything. It's a lot about individual progression.
True enough. Interestingly enough, we have won a few this year that some were expected and some were not. So the season's been going well. It's a rigorous, long season. We're about the longest season in Division III athletics, starting in October and ending in March with nationals. So it's, on paper, a really long season. We've had some nice victories. We've had some nice swims. Everything comes down to the conference championships at the end of the year, though. So.
You know, before we talk about the conference championships, how do you keep your athletes interested? Because, like you said, it is a long season. You start in October, and you swim. I mean, that's what you do. And how do you keep it, you know, fresh? How do you keep them the intensity up so that they can continue to train as you get ready for something that's 5 months away?
Definitely a challenge, for sure. Like any good training program, we have some phases. We kind of cycle in and out of different things. We are in the weight room a lot, even more so this year. There's our little nugget in the middle of the year when we traveled this winter to Florida. I consider that bribery. The training is intense, and it's a lot easier when there's palm trees and sand around too. So, but I think that's a coach's job, to be creative, to keep things different and changing, but yet on track for the end of the year.
I was going to suggest ice in the water.
Plenty of that around here.
Eric, how about individual performances? Some swimmers and divers that you were expecting great things from and have definitely provided that, and then maybe some others who made big strides this year.
Yeah, a lot of names to go through this year, I think, as our team hasn't grown considerably, but we've kind of accelerated some of our talent. On the women's team, our seniors for sure, Courtney Kyler, Jen Salzman, who's performing very well. We're looking for great things there. And Angela Lager will be leaving us this year, but all have had a terrific year. One of our female divers, Liz Flynn, has owned the 1 meter and the 3 meter for that matter at a lot of our meets this year, and it's going to be very exciting to see where that ends up at the conference championships. On the men's side, the local favorite, John Fox, swimming well. 100 breaststroke is his, and it will be until he graduates. But sophomore Tim Tisk has done well. We've got a freshman out of Iowa, Mark Ross, that he's the real deal. He's going to be one to watch here at the end of the year too. So it's been good.
How about expectations? Talk a little bit now about the conference championship. Obviously, it's a 3-day event, which is something that you guys haven't done all year. Is you know, swim competitively back to back to back. Talk about the preparation for the championships.
Yeah, you know, swimming and diving, it's intense training year long, with what we call a taper phase for the swimmers at the end of the year, where we rest and try and get ready, which we're in the middle of right now. And we go into a 3-day meet, and your window of opportunity, it's the coach's challenge to time things to make sure that your swimmers are ready to swim on Thursday as well as Saturday at that meet. Most athletes will have one individual event each day, coupled with some relays. If they are in the top 16 in their individual event, they repeat that again at night for scoring purposes. But it's an interesting, fun, tough battle that most of the athletes are looking forward to. In terms of expectations, that's why we go to the meet. I don't like to predict. There's going to be some good things. I'm very excited to see what can happen, but we'll just have to go swim it and see.
So you're not going to make any predictions?
No. I think maybe what you're alluding to is, you know, can John go back to nationals? I sure think he can. I sure hope he can. Last year he was second fiddle in the conference to Nelson Westby at St. Olaf, and he's graduated. That doesn't mean they're going to hand John a conference championship, but, you know, it's that much closer. I think John and myself would be just as excited to be in the mix again for nationals, or maybe pursuing a conference champion in the 100 breaststroke.
Is it different for John this year? And like you said, last year he was kind of the the second guy, because Nelson was it. He was the guy that was going to win it, and you knew that. And John was able to just kind of swim his race. Well, this year, John's that guy that everybody's chasing. Is it different for him in preparation for this weekend?
I don't think so. I think if you ask John, no, he's cool as a cucumber. He's just going about his business. Interestingly enough, it's still the MIAC. John is not alone at the top. There's new guys showing up. They've been battling back and forth on our top times list all year. So it's, again, nothing will just be handed to anybody in the MIAC, as we know. So
Eric, John is a Winona native, and so let's spend a little bit more time just talking about him. I'm curious to know, what has he brought to the program besides, the first and second place finishes? I mean, do the other athletes really look up to him, pattern their training after him, that sort of thing?
Certainly. John's a quiet leader. John leads by example. He's not our cheerleader for sure, but when he walks in the door for practice, you know what he's going to do, and he sets the stage daily for us. John's brought a local flavor to it for sure. We've get some interest from people in town that want to know how he's doing, people that may not have followed swimming before, let alone St. Mary's swimming. And John's brought his family, quite frankly. They're a big part of it. They're close by with the team getting to enjoy some time with his family at their home and whatnot. So it's been an all-around real joy to have them a part of the program.
You talk about the local flavor of John. The one I want to ask you about is Jen Salzman, because she's from Hilo, Hawaii, and I want to know how you got somebody from Hawaii to come to tiny Winona.
Actually, it'd be the local flair again. Jen's grandmother used to work at the university, so she knew about us through that. Other pieces of the puzzle fit together for her. She wanted a small school where she could swim, but also play water polo. Our club water polo program's pretty good, and she had an opportunity to do both, and here she is. So yeah, who trades Hawaii for what's outside right now?
Here I just thought that was your aggressive recruiting tactics there.
Yeah. That one, she was
you
on
didn't
her
get a
own for
recruiting trip on that
no,
one.
No, I
did
didn't. No, we need to work on that though.
But do talk about that. How do you recruit the swimmers and divers? When is the prime season for that kind of thing?
Well, our high school girls swim in the fall, boys swim in the winter. And it's a matter of telling them what we have. I think we offer as much or more than most of the programs out there, and we have a good thing going. We've proved that we can compete. We can provide the right training platform for them to succeed, and there's a lot of other benefits of being at St. Mary's, which most of our athletes already know, and we need to get the word out there to them. In terms of recruiting is year-round. It's not just maybe collegiate basketball that, as much as we hear about them recruiting, it's all sports. There's no rest when it comes to recruiting. You're always sending an email or making a phone call or getting a contact out there.
Yeah. The other thing, your teams are very tight-knit. We were both at a wedding in the fall of one of your former athletes, and so many of her teammates came to that wedding. Coaches, faculty were there. It was just, I think, a good example of the St. Mary's community.
I think so. I think it speaks volumes, certainly about our program, but maybe more about the school, that they do build those relationships that last a lifetime. And it sounds like a recruiting brochure, but turns out it's true.
It's true. It really is.
But you look at your teams too, and when you have alumni gatherings, I mean, there's dozens of people that come back for your gatherings, and I think that says a lot about the program and that tight-knit community that you've got inside of the community of St. Mary's.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the sentiment. I also think maybe it's a byproduct of all those hours in the pool. You can't do that with people you don't want to spend time with, and then it carries over. So a little bit of both.
A little bit more on the conference championships. When is that again, and where is it? And then who are some of the teams that will be competing for some of the top honors there?
Yeah, it starts a week from tomorrow. It's at the University of Minnesota. Runs for 3 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday at their aquatic center. It's new to us this year that we have qualifying standards, so it's not an all-comers meet anymore. That's posed a bit of a challenge for some of the smaller teams. We've done pretty well. We have the majority of our team qualified anyways. The larger teams that are competing for the top berths didn't really have to worry about it, so we'll see where that goes in the future. Who's good this year? I think that's always tough in the MIAC. Our top 4 teams will be top 15 in the nation.
Right.
But my dark horse pick is probably St. Thomas to win it all this year. They're really, really good this year.
A lot of it's the depth too, isn't it? I mean, most teams will have a couple of good swimmers, or 3, 4. But I think isn't it the depth that really brings those top programs up?
Yeah, for sure during the regular season. At the conference meet, it's the best of the best there. So then it's really just a battle. And I think maybe the Tommies have it this year. But again, like we talked about in the individual events, nobody's going to hand it to them. Gustavus will battle, and St. Olaf is always in the mix. They have, I believe, 28 conference championships of the last 30. So they won't just hand it over.
And then after the conference meet, what comes after that? Some NCAA championships, right?
Yep.
Where hopefully John will be a part of.
Yeah, and maybe others. I'd be remiss if I didn't say other people had a shot at it. But that's about a month following the men's and women's combined national championships, which will also be at the University of Minnesota this year. So at least for one more year.
Sure.
So that's kind of where we take one day off, catch our breath, and then restart to try and prepare for that.
All right. Eric Lindquist, the head coach for the swimmers and divers at St. Mary's. Thanks for being on the show. Good luck at the conference championships.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Stay tuned. Donnie and I will be back to wrap things up here on HBC.
With objects coming right out of the screen. So real.
I see. There.
Prepared by Dr. Bryant to determine your ability to withstand shock.
At the Carnival of Soul. Coming to get you, Barbara.
Feed me!
Well, this is the weekend where February break starts at St. Mary's University, so the students have a week off, but not all of the students go back home and work or lounge or do projects, that sort of thing. Some of the students and some of the faculty and staff actually go on what are called soul mission trips. And that's what's coming up, and they're going all over the country. Campus Ministry plans these, and SOUL stands for Serving Others United in Love. And they go to some of the places that you see on the screen, and they help people who are in disadvantaged situations. Sometimes they'll help expectant mothers or single mothers, or they'll help build homes, that sort of thing. So a variety of mission trips. They're all for great causes, and I have heard nothing but good things. Students are paired with a faculty or a staff member who sort of supervise the trip, but by and large these are terrific students going on these trips who just want to help others during what is typically their week off.
Yeah, I want to figure out this break part though, because obviously we don't have a break.
Right.
Obviously a very busy weekend for us in the athletic department. With we've got our indoor track and field meet is on Friday. Coach McMahon hosts one every year, and it's the Cardinal Open, and he's excited about that. And then you've got men's hockey with St. John's on Friday and Saturday afternoon. You've got both basketball games on Saturday at 1 and 3 at the SMU gym. So it's a jam-packed break for us. So
Yeah,
it'll be a good Saturday, because for the women's basketball, that'll be their last home game of the season. And when you get to this time of the year, it's kind of sentimental when you get to those last games. And I know that she's fortunate, Coach Pearson, that they don't have a senior as well. So both our basketball teams will be playing their last games, but it'll be just their last games of the season. Nobody will be
no senior day.
Right,
Yeah.
Nobody will be disappearing for their their career or anything like that.
The other thing, we are coming up on transition time, and Donnie, I've seen a lot of ice packs around campus with some of the baseball, softball players, especially the pitchers, as they start working on their arms.
Absolutely.
And stuff for the
February
season.
1st, they started February 1, so they're in full swing, and obviously the softball team is gearing up. They'll go to California in mid-March, and then the baseball team will go to Arizona the last week of March. So they've got their spring trips planned.
Which one are you joining
I
this
will
year?
be at both.
Both?
So, yep,
Great.
absolutely.
Good
So we'll keep you informed on the weather and whatnot. But it's a great trip, and I always enjoy them because it gives me an opportunity to travel with the teams and get to know them a little bit rather than just their names and their hometowns. So it's a lot of fun.
All right, we got to run. We'll be off next week, be back the next week after that. Thanks for watching the Cardinals Nest on HBC.